In golf, precision is everything, on and off the course. PGA of America chose advanced 5G solutions from T-Mobile for Business for smooth operations and seamless transactions. Together, we enhance ticketing and concessions for better fan experiences from gate to green. This is pro-level efficiency. This is PGA of America with T-Mobile for Business. Take your business further at T-Mobile.com/now.
Shopping is hard, right? But I found a better way. Stitch Fix online personal styling makes it easy. I just give my stylist my size, style, and budget preferences. I order boxes when I want and how I want. No subscription required. And he sends just for me pieces, plus outfit recommendations and styling tips. I keep what works and send back the rest. It's so easy. Make style easy. Get started today at StitchFix.com/Spotify. That's StitchFix.com/Spotify.
Always look to the sky. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
I'm Dr. Sky, your night bird of the airwaves, welcoming you once again to the Dr. Sky Experience here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. Great information, as you tell us, from the realms of astronomy, space, aviation, and the weather world, and also great realm of technology. I'd be remiss if I didn't thank Tony, our helmsman, navigating our powerhouse radio beacon out to the cosmos. He, of course, handles your calls. And we welcome your phone calls to this show and this radio station, simply at 1-800-848-9222. That's 1-800-848-9222, which simply stands for, of course, WABC. Email me at drsky@wabcradio.com. And if you happen to tell other people, and I'm sure you do, at least we appreciate that, about this particular show, if they miss it, they can get, of course, and listen to copies at the podcast at Red Apple Audio Networks or simply wabcradio.com. Great information as we welcome each and every one of you, no matter where you're listening or calling us, from the deserts of Arizona to the skyscrapers of New York, 173 countries in all 50 states, and everyone in between. Get set for 2 hours of exciting radio. And we appreciate management offering the opportunity, that is, to have this show repeat in about 24 hours. Great information also. Saturdays, midnight to 2 a.m. Sunday. Please put it in your calendar. Great things that are happening. We wish everybody out there the happiest of Mother's Day. Motherhood, as many said, is all love begins and ends there. And we'll be talking about that throughout the weekend with guests that align with the topic at hand. But first, ladies and gentlemen, a very interesting guest for this particular hour. I'm sure you will enjoy Mark Beckman. He, of course, is someone who wrote a book that we'll be talking about here on the Dr. Sky Experience called Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything. Mark Beckman, Some Future Day. His show, Mark Beckman Evaluates Technology at the intersection of culture and law, and he features industry experts from some of the world's biggest brands like Microsoft, Walmart, and many others, as well as government officials responsible for implementing and regulating these emerging technologies. Host Mark Beckman is a senior fellow of emerging technologies at NYU, a member of the New York State Bar Association, the Task Force for Cryptocurrency and Digital Assets, and the best-selling author of this particular book and others, and one surrounding blockchain technology. This particular hour, ladies and gentlemen, with you at 1-800-848-9222 with your questions and comments, talking about something that Mark will go into great detail about. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the age of imagination. Good morning, Mark. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate your time, sir.
Steve, thank you for having me. It's great to be on your show.
Well, thank you so much. And this book, boy, I'll tell you something. This is quite amazing, folks. This is a book that you've, of course, published through Skyhorse Publishing. They do, of course, many great books with many authors. So the book entitled, Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything. And, you know, Mark, before we get started, a lot of people out there, some may have great misgivings about this. I mean, everybody has an opinion on this. And, of course, we've heard a lot about the negative side of AI. But your book brings some refreshing topics here that I'd like you to start off in 12 chapters. And, of course, only a limited time for an hour. But I hope you'll join us again in the future if we don't succeed to climb to the highest peak. Talk about your involvement with AI. This is fascinating.
Sure. It's kind of interesting. I wanted to write a book for many people that I would imagine are listening to your show regularly, your audience, people who are curious, that want to learn about new things, that want to learn how to perhaps improve their career, enhance their family life, and even improve their community. And artificial intelligence allows for that. But this isn't a book that's like deep tech or heavy on the tech side. It's more about practical application, real use cases where people from all walks of life, whether it's the creative industries like fashion, art, music, entertainment, medical industry, government, finance, all different industries can take a look at the book and see how artificial intelligence will fundamentally change those worlds. And what I wanted to do was make sure that for the beginner, I provided them with tools that they could apply to their life immediately. So at the end of every single chapter, I provide the names of companies and links to the companies that they can access artificial intelligence today for a very good price point, in many cases for free, and implement these types of sciences into their life to enhance their lifestyle. And essentially that's
that sounds very promising. Yes.
Yeah.
No, that's amazing. It sounds very promising because let's go back in the time tunnel to 1956, the year I was born, and you know this, I'm sure, better. John McCarthy, a computer scientist at Dartmouth, he obviously coined this particular term, artificial intelligence. And it's so amazing to think in the 69 years that we would even be here today. So let me hear a little bit more about you in the correlation of what you do in the world, because I'm also understood here, if I'm reading this right, that you also have the very popular, podcast program talking about this in great detail. Talk a little bit about yourself.
I do. I appreciate that. So the book is really brought to life through my experiences. I am the chief executive officer of an award-winning advertising agency in New York City named DMA United. I almost said Some Future Day. And with DMA United, we focus on different types of industries, but mainly fashion, art, music, sports, and entertainment. And what we do is we leverage technology such as artificial intelligence to give our clients a fundamental benefit, to really give them value, to challenge, in many cases, the big legacy businesses. So we use artificial intelligence in two ways, Steve. The first is really through generative AI, where we'll create original content. And the second is through data analytics. So that's my business world. But because of that, I've written, as you mentioned earlier in the beginning of the show, a couple of books, including this book. And I've been teaching an MBA class at NYU Stern now on marketing for 7 years. It's an amazing class, actually, with people from all walks of life. And because the books did pretty good, this book, as you mentioned, went to number one on Amazon for artificial intelligence.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. NYU underwrites the cost of a show. They produce my show called Some Future Day, and it's on Some Future Day where I bring in guests from all different industries, from NASA and Microsoft, from Rock and Roll Hall of Famers to even the First Lady of the United States. And what we do is we use technology as a gateway to open up broader cultural discussions. So in some cases, like when the presidential fellow of NASA comes on my show, we break down exactly what artificial intelligence is going to be used for and how it's going to, really evolve the world. But in other cases, it's just very simple application. It's not so complicated. It could be about gaming, or it could be, military areas, deep fakes in government, and these types of conversations. It's super compelling. And what it does is it gives me access to real application of AI. Yeah.
Well, I want to make sure that listeners get involved in this conversation. In limited time we have with you. The contact number here, 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. You may have some questions about pro or con about AI, but in this conversation, we're going to at least talk about some of the positivity that our special guest, Mark Beckman, brings. His book, again, entitled Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything. And speaking of that in the business realm, from chapter 1, just give us a little look-see. into some of the things that business creators and workers might participate in the beneficial side with AI from your book.
Yeah, I love that you're giving me the opportunity to talk about this first chapter. Frankly, most people that I've been talking to in the media don't give it to me. And it's one of my favorite chapters. I call it The Age of Imagination. And it's really interesting because think about how many people do you know that are dreamers? They want to create things. These are the people that want to start up their own Hollywood studio, or they want to be a musician. They want to write their own book, but they never have a chance to. They can't compete with the legacy industries, or perhaps they just don't know how to break in. They don't know how to get away from their day job, let's say. And what artificial intelligence is doing now is it's allowing for all of these individual creators, like that 17-year-old dreamer who lives uptown in Manhattan and is in her apartment, and she wants to be the next world-class fashion designer, or the next Martin Scorsese who's sitting perhaps like on a farm in India. Well, now they can go ahead and through the use of artificial intelligence, create the most gorgeous and compelling videos, songs, hyper-realistic photographs, and beyond. And it's interesting. It's going to create a certain amount of access in these industries. It's going to create a certain amount of leveling or equalization in these industries. But it's also going to create a certain amount of new content, new dreams. I talk about like the democratization of content at points in the book, because we'll have so many different points of view. And this is all through text prompting. So you don't have to be, a fantastic director, someone like a Brett Ratner who's creating these amazing superhero films like X-Men. It could just be somebody like me. I've never created a film. I have a dream, and I could create the next superhero right in my living room. It's pretty remarkable.
The age of imagination, as you say. No, that's amazing. I've been giving some presentations here. I don't have the knowledge base that you have, but people enjoy listening to some of the things that I'm doing research on. And, of course, the great writer Ray Kurzweil. We have a couple of books here. The Age of Spiritual Machines, which I've gone through. The Singularity is Near. And now what, Mark? The Singularity is even nearer. Talk to us about the whole concept of what singularity is. A lot of people, in the astrophysics world, I talk about that from black holes, but this is a whole different conversation. Simply, for everybody listening around the nation, around the world, what is the whole concept of singularity? What does that mean?
So as it relates to AI, and to keep it really simple at first, essentially this is the moment when artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence. Now, on the upside, that could be incredible because it could create groundbreaking moments for mankind that could relate to everything from space travel and exploration to medical advancements and beyond. But there's a downside, a dark side to it as well. People fear that when we reach singularity, it might also create the end of humanity, because artificial intelligence will cause, perhaps a total loss of control, accidental extinction, weaponization, where, the AI takes over our nuclear weapons and points them back at us. So there's a lot of conflicting thoughts as to, singularity. And, to be honest with you, a lot of people think that this is going to happen much quicker because artificial intelligence is growing, is essentially training itself at a higher, a more accelerated pace than was expected. So, as far as I'm concerned, I want to tell you, I'm not one of these people that believes that singularity brings the end of humanity. Again, I'm a tech optimist, and I think what singularity will do for us is create great value for communities, and with that, it will enhance access to food. It will enhance our access to better medical services. I think AI will effectively, or singularity, let's say, when we get there, will effectively rise humanity to the next level.
Well, Mark, it's interesting. Myself and everybody out there is not naive. We could get hundreds of guests that could come on this particular show talking about the nefarious side or the danger side of AI. But why I like your book, and I'm being really serious about this, you're talking more about the whole age of imagination. And let's talk about the area that I think affects most people, those listening now, and obviously everybody on the planet, if they're critical thinkers, the miracles in medicine. Talk about specifics that we have to look forward to or can look forward to, where AI is interceding in the areas of medicine, a much needed approach to solving, medical crises and diseases.
Steve, we're already making great advances. I'm so happy that you're giving me the opportunity to address this. I mentioned to you it's great to have guests on my show some future day. One guest that I had is a doctor right here in the tri-state area of New York City who is leading the charge in helping paralyzed patients, individuals who are paralyzed, to regain their feeling and their movement through the use of artificial intelligence by inserting chips in their brain. He's already done this. He and his team have already done this with 3 individuals effectively. And the way I understand it, again, obviously I'm not a doctor, although I do have a Juris Doctorate. I am not a doctor. But the way I understand it, the way he described it to me is the AI is training the neurons to fire, to move across like a bypass of sorts, away from the area that is no longer functioning, no longer sending signals. So what happens is essentially when that individual, the paralyzed individual's brain is working normally, the neurons get cut off in this like dead zone of sorts. And now the AI is redirecting it and allowing for these paralyzed individuals to feel
That's
again
amazing.
and to move
Amazing.
Yeah, and it's 3 people that they've done this with already.
Well, Elon Musk, his thing, he's working on his technology. But imagine this, ladies and gentlemen, and, Mark is not a medical doctor. He has a JD degree, of course, as an attorney and a lawyer. But the interesting part of this, Mark, I think is fascinating, is if, let's say, people who suffer from Alzheimer's or vision difficulties or spinal paralysis, I mean, what a wonderful world, as you talk about the age of imagination, where hopefully human beings who don't have, who should not have to suffer at all with these ailments that have been going on for thousands of years. It's such an important thing. So obviously this is an important conversation. You too, ladies and gentlemen, have an opportunity to jump in on this particular subject, of course, because we value the callers to this particular radio show, like all the other shows here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. If you're just joining us, our special guest is Mark Beckman, author of Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything, a Skyhorse Publishing book. But equally important is the number, 1-800-848-9222, 1-800-848-9222. So tell us, how long did it take you to compile all this information? Because we got 12 chapters, and we certainly won't get through every one of them for information, but that's why people should get the book, indeed, as every person who writes a book, more information than we could possibly do in an hour. So how long did it take you to compile all this? It's something that just doesn't happen overnight, of course.
Now, Steve, this book took me, honestly, I would say almost 2 years to assemble and build. Part of what I did, which was really exciting, was I was able to take information that I shared in a lot of different speeches over that time period and build it out from that perspective, too. But, I know you're a book writer yourself. It's tough to get through it. And then when you I'm curious about your opinion on this, actually. Like, when you wrote your books, didn't you feel at some point like perhaps it's just not right, it's not good, I don't want to let it go, and then you want to edit more and more, and you just don't want to let it go because you're almost afraid to put it out there because it just might be terrible?
Well, Mark, I made a pledge to this audience to be truthful and honest because that's the only way. I have not written a book at this point in time, and you know what? I may be calling you for the advice to kickstart me to do the same thing because so many people say, hey, you've been talking about these subjects, meaning the astrophysics and space and all that. But more important than me at this moment in time, it's just difficult in many ways. Now, people can go, of course, to do the Amazon book. They can go out and do it the traditional, as you have with Skyhorse Publishing. But what I find so fascinating about when somebody puts all this information together, everything changes so quickly. So it's amazing. All your information is as current as it is now, but it's an undertaking. So how long did it take again to compile all this?
I would say it took at least 2 years to put this book together. It really was a massive labor of love. And then within the book, I know that you took a look at it yourself, and I tried to get a little bit more heady than my first book. My first book was about blockchain and NFTs, and it was really like right down the middle of the road. Here's what you need to know as it relates to this technology across these different fields, almost from the perspective of a chief marketing officer. But with the new book, with Some Future Day, How AI Will Change Everything, I wanted to create a situation where it made people think a little bit. It inspired people. I get a little philosophical. I talk about, for example, at some points how, our next generation is amusing themselves to death with social media, where they're almost becoming, I call it, publicly, the age of dumb, where, with access to social media, they're limiting their access to intelligence. I talk about the interaction between cryptocurrency, social media, and artificial intelligence. I name it the Iron Triangle. So I try to get a little heady here. And, again, when I finished the book, every time I thought I was finished, I was like, I don't really like this. I got to change it again. And I struggled with letting this one out into the universe.
This is interesting. And, through the chapters, I'm trying to hit as many of these as I can that not only would have an interest from my perspective, but more importantly to the listeners here. In the few minutes before we go to the hard break at the bottom of the hour, advances in contemporary warfare. Mark, I have an area of concentration which we talk about heavily, about aircraft, about military. And we see now something very interesting. We're talking about the new B-21 Spirit, the evolution path of the B-2 bomber. And many are saying that not only will it have pilots, but they're the lesser of importance on this B-2 billion or so dollar bomber, that it will be flown autonomously through AI also. So look at all the advancements in what's happening in the military side. And, of course, I know drone technology could be a whole show, but in a couple of minutes, which is about 2 or 3, give us some examples of how this has helped in the area of contemporary warfare. Obviously, nobody loves war, but what has it done in the area of AI?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite chapters, probably my favorite chapter in the book, because I see this as a post-nuclear time period now, where the efficiencies of artificial intelligence, you mentioned drones, for example, AI allows now for efficiencies that include access to weaponry for less money, to build weaponry for less money, and also different levels of control. So now you have these superpowers like America that have huge arsenals worth, trillions of dollars that are, I envision it as like these huge super tankers. But then you have these smaller nations, these challenger nations that can now take drones. There's a company, for example, called Extend Drones. I had the CEO on my show, and you can control now swarms of drones from anywhere in the world to anywhere in the world without a military background. It's almost like gaming. So here from New York City, I could launch swarms of drones to attack anywhere, India, Asia, the Middle East, Europe, without any military background, and really cause some damage. And this is just the beginning. In fact, Extend Drones has
right. And if you haven't seen the movie,
Department of Defense,
I guess it's right. But if you haven't seen the movie, Olympus Has Fallen, I guess it's, or Olympus, that's an interesting movie with Morgan Freeman. And if you don't believe that drone swarms in the future could be a problem, that might be one of the nefarious sides. But please go ahead, sir. We just got a moment or two before the break.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to look. You mentioned autonomous vehicles. We're going to have, as you mentioned, autonomous vehicles in the air as well as in the sea. And then there are going to be other issues that are going to come into play as it relates to different information wars, deepfake propaganda, influencing, the beginning of wars. Essentially, I believe that the entire arena of war will change, where perhaps it's going to be robots, and there won't really be any humans that are getting hit to the level and the extent that we're used to. Think in terms of cyber attacks. We're seeing that now. I think that, this flare-up that's happening in Pakistan and India, I understand that Pakistan really hit India hard with a cyber attack and already took down some major power grids and satellites. And these are the
that's incredible.
That we're going to see in a big way. Yeah, it's going to be.
That is incredible.
Yeah.
No, and we hear many things about submarines. I mean, all autonomous vehicles. Supposedly on the dark side, the Russians have a submarine type of torpedo they call Poseidon that they claim can go underwater at speeds. For those of you out there that are more familiar with naval warfare or been in the Navy in ships or submarines, they claim that this Poseidon torpedo, about 60 feet long, Mark, has the ability to go underwater at speeds of about 80 or 100 knots underwater, capable of having in its front warhead a 100-megaton weapon, horrible as it sounds, that it could actually destroy harbors and so much more. But there may be some of that on the dark side of AI if used for not necessarily good things. Folks, we haven't gotten to you yet. We know we have Rick in New Jersey. We have other callers on the line. We promise to get you on the air, or as best as we can as we move toward the top of the hour. here on a show, ladies and gentlemen, that we're so proud to be behind the microphone of, the Dr. Sky Experience. Here, as we have two programs, 2 hours in length, as you're listening right now, Friday midnight to 2 a.m. Saturday, and then the extended version of the similar kind of concepts and topics of astronomy, space, aviation, weather, and technology, and maybe even celebrity guests in the mix as we've had in the past, here on this particular radio station, where Talk Radio 77 WABC. We'll take that hard break at the bottom of the hour here, ladies and gentlemen. Our special guest, Mark Beckman. He's the author of this book, which we recommend if we have a Dr. Sky bookshelf that we're building, the book entitled Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything. We'll be right back.
The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hi, this is Hugh Downs. You're listening to Dr. Sky on aviation and space and life.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, 32 minutes after the hour, as we move into our weekend, we appreciate you. Our very special guest is author Mark Beckman. His book, Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything, and he believes it, and I'm sure many of you out there have opinions on that. Let's, of course, go to the callers right now and welcome Rick in New Jersey. Good morning, Rick. Your question or comment. You're on the air.
Good morning. Thanks for taking my call. I'm very concerned because they're already teaching AI that man is the enemy of the planet. We're destroying it with global warming. That's not true. And what do we do about it?
Good question, Rick. Mark, your comment?
Well, look, I personally haven't seen artificial intelligence, like an LLM specifically, whether that's ChatGPT or DeepSeek or Perplexity, state exactly what Rick mentioned. However, what I will tell you is I wouldn't be surprised if Rick saw that. What we have is a situation, and I think this is where the root of Rick's concern is stemming from, where the issue is who controls the AI? Who is training the AI? Now, centralized entities could train the AI and really shift the perception of reality in many ways. It could educate and influence cultures, especially the next generation, who may become lazy and just rely on the AI to do the work rather than doing the research and the work themselves. So when I talk about centralized power for AI, it's really important, and Rick is really like striking a perfect nerve right here. The issue is, why should we trust governments, maybe perhaps China, maybe perhaps the United States? Why should we trust corporations?
Yes, you hit it on the head, right.
Right? Corporations that have a fiduciary duty to drive value to their shareholders, corporations like Microsoft, corporations like X with Grok and beyond, to train LLMs in a way that are entirely accurate versus what they are looking to push with regards to their agenda. And I'm already seeing, like, for example, DeepSeek, Steve, the Chinese LLM, if you ask DeepSeek about issues surrounding news, let's say Tiananmen Square, Xi Jinping, or whether or not Uyghurs are slaves, their DeepSeek's answer, the output with regard to those issues is entirely contradictory to what we believe here in the United States. They make it as if Tiananmen Square never had the protest. They say
No, you bring up good points.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Right. Let's get Rick. Rick, are you still with us? Go ahead and give a response back, because, you bring up some interesting points. We're not naive here to think that everything, Mark's doing a great job, but there is a side to this that I think people need to be concerned about. Rick, please continue if you're with us.
Yes, the whole thing about the global warming scam is that it's an anti-industrial movement. So they want us to destroy our industry by limiting what we can do by, basically cutting off the tailpipe of your car. You can stop feeding the car gas, or you can cut off the tailpipe. Either way, you stop the engine. So everything they teach it is antithetical to prosperity, and that causes more poverty, which causes more death.
Yeah, I have some concerns about the whole AI thing, too. No, go ahead. Please continue, sir. I'm sorry.
Well, that's the big thing, is that the whole movement has to be stopped, and teaching AI false facts like warming is a bad thing. No, warming is a good thing. The idea that man controls the temperature of the earth. Man doesn't control the temperature of the earth. Even if CO2 controlled the greenhouse effect, which it doesn't, almost 97% of CO2 comes from nature anyway. So it's just feeding it with all the wrong information, bad science.
Well, Rick, I got to tell
love
you,
your
though,
common sense approach to it. Yeah, go ahead.
Look, Rick, I'm not going to debate you on the substantive issues that you're raising, because in many cases I agree with you personally. However, I got to tell you, the funny thing about AI right now is that, like Elon Musk's version of the LLM, Grok, would probably align a little bit more with your perspective of the world than Sam Altman's AI platform, ChatGPT. This is why I'm talking about these centralized powers, whereby a company like OpenAI, which has major investments from Microsoft and happens to lean a little bit further to the left than Elon's Grok, will go ahead and embrace global warming and these types of issues in a way that you don't align with. So that's a big issue at the heart of AI and LLMs right now.
Well, gentlemen, I want to bring up something before Rick goes back, and I do appreciate all the callers here to the radio show that we're so proud to have here, the Dr. Sky Experience. I wonder what both of you gentlemen think. Here's something, too, on the nefarious side. We were talking about in another program, Eric Drexler, a futurist. He said that if nanobots, these little things, which I'd like you later to explain, Mark, a little better than I can, that somehow if they actually got so much out of hand in replication, they could consume all organic matter and produce this thing called gray goo. Sounds crazy, doesn't it? But, wow, that's also something that maybe, if you define nanobots to us, first tell us a little bit about that. That's an interesting story.
Well, I think as it relates to artificial intelligence, what he's leaning towards is even deeper. It's really transhumanism, which I believe is feasible in our lifetime. And what transhumanism is basically enhancement beyond our biological limitations, which in many cases includes technology such as nanobots, small, tiny particles that could go in and impact us in different ways. So you and I touched on these brain-computer interfaces, like you referenced Elon's Neuralink. I was talking about
Correct.
The chips that they're putting in here for paralyzed individuals. But when you could put into these, essentially like you're creating with nanobots a digital substrate within humans, it really could have an impact that changes people. And I believe that we'll see this transhumanism within our lifetime. It's not just, by the way, with putting in these nanobots that are able to flow with the minute level of blood cells, but transhumanism is also going to be impacting genetic engineering. It's going to essentially create different levels of humanity. And this is where, people get a little freaked out with these, robots, like these hybrid human robot scenarios.
Well, I mean, there's good and bad in anything. But again, Rick, I appreciate your time. Hope you'll call us again as we continue to move and open up our minds. The main reason for this show, at least I believe it, and I hope others do and appreciate it, is to open our minds on the many mysteries of the universe. And thank you, Rick, for being part of our show. Let's go to Christine. Good morning, Christine. Thank you for joining us here on the Dr. Sky Experience. Your question or comment?
Hi, Dr. Sky. You have a fascinating show. I always look forward to listening to you. But when I hear this, and I hear about the genetic engineering and the singularity, I'm familiar with these comments. I know what this is. But it reminds me of a comment by Albert Einstein that said the difference between genius and mediocrity is a genius knows its limits. AI can't think.
Wow. Yeah.
It's not human, and we can't even fly a freaking plane these days.
I know. There's a lot of things that need to be done in the aviation world. But, Christine, no offense. I appreciate your call, but your voice on the phone, not your voice, but the communication line, sounds like you're literally on the planet Mars. So I want Mark to respond. Yeah. We appreciate your call. Hopefully you'll call us again. But, Mark, you're on to respond to Christine's concerns, and they're good ones.
Well, they certainly are. People ask me, I think, can AI become sentient, right? Like, what is the definition of sentience? And that's feeling, as she referenced, perceiving, subjective consciousness. And the reality is that no machine can demonstrate these types of capabilities, Dr. Sky. Like, it's just not possible. And
yes.
What I look at is, like, today's models, we have to understand it's algebra. For the most part, what we're looking at with artificial intelligence is predicting the next piece. It's not understanding. It's processing data. They don't feel the emotion or the joy that you and I have. They don't have these AI verticals don't have free will that like we all have. So there is a big right now as to where we are today. There is a big difference between what humans feel versus what these machines are doing. This is why I feel like this is why I personally am very optimistic about artificial intelligence, because I don't fear they're going to take over. AI right now just doesn't have the capabilities that humans do. It's just predictive.
Yes, and something else I want to mention here, and I know this goes along to what Christine was talking about, and others I'm sure that are concerned. If you talk about Einstein, and he said simply this in so many words, not direct quote, that gravity is nothing more than the warpage of space-time. It would be most amazing, Mark, if we ever reach, probably not in our lifetimes, but if AI had that ability, not to be, joining bio to be sentient, that let's say it had the capability of moving along the space-time continuum, then time travel would be something of a reality. Some say that's very scary, obviously not something that's going to happen anytime soon in our lifetime. But there's so many mysteries about this, and it's so important to talk about it. And folks, as we move toward the next break here in just a moment or so, I just want to remind you, you still have an opportunity to get in on this conversation, 1-800-848-9222. Our special guest, if you're just driving and coming back from locations that you were out and couldn't hear the show, special guest is Mark Beckman, Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything, a Skyhorse Publishing book. Well, that's very interesting, because think about that. If Einstein is talking about gravity is simply what? The warpage of space-time. I wonder how long, Mark, in the future it would take AI, since it's obviously done even the simplest things. In 1997, the machine beat the world international chess champion, and the way things are moving along, that singularity is pretty close, I imagine, correct?
I believe so. I think you had referenced earlier the author Ray Kurzweil, and yes. I think his prediction was that we would hit singularity in 2045. My feeling is that we're going to reach that point way before then. I mean, really, really way before then. I think, it will be personally, and from what I read and from what I understand, it will probably be within the next 2030, in the 2030s or so. But I'm just basing that purely on speculation.
Here's kind of a lighthearted research. Right. Here's like a lighthearted comment. What are we all going to do if AI does all the hard work for us? Well, what do we do all day? Maybe we can do what you're talking about in the age of imagination, do the things that are so wonderful for the people here on the earth. And I'm not trying to be naive, but wouldn't it be wonderful, Mark, if we followed the golden rule every single day and learned from history, and that we obviously let the machine, if we could trust it, that's another question, live our lives as trying to be more what? Kind to each individual and to the beautiful animals that are here on the earth. But Mark, we're going to that next break, and here we go, ladies and gentlemen, one more time before we race to the top of the hour. You're listening to the Dr. Sky Experience here on Talk Radio 77 WABC. We appreciate you. Mark Beckman and I will be back. Your questions and comments, once again, to 1-800-848-9222.
Running a business comes with a lot of what-ifs. But luckily, there's a simple answer to them. Shopify. It's the commerce platform behind millions of businesses, including Thrive Cosmetics and Momofuku. And it'll help you with everything you need. From website design and marketing to boosting sales and expanding operations, Shopify can get the job done and make your dream a reality. Turn those what-ifs into... Sign up for your $1 per month trial at shopify.com/special offer.
At Capella University, you can learn at your own pace with our FlexPath learning format. Take 1 or 2 courses at a time and complete as many as you can in a 12-week billing session. With FlexPath, you can even finish the bachelor's degree you started in 22 months for $20,000. A different future is closer than you think with Capella University. Learn more at capella.edu. Fastest 25% of students. Cost varies by pace, transfer credits, and other factors. Fees apply.
Acura's all-new ADX, a compact SUV that isn't just built for one thing. It's precision crafted for everything. To escape the grind with available all-wheel drive. To go with your flow with available Google built-in.
Hey Google, turn it up.
Okay, turning up the volume. And crafted to be heard with an available Bang & Olufsen premium sound system. The all-new Acura ADX, crafted to match your energy. Acura, precision crafted performance.
Take your vibes on go, 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 go.
Google is a trademark of Google LLC.
Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
This is the Dr. Sky Experience. Always look to the sky. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Recently, Hugh Downs was asked why he enjoys listening to the Dr. Sky Show. I think the reason is simply that with the amount of time he has two things going. One is the knowledge to know science. And the second thing is the ability to get it across to people who might not quite understand it, and you get it across correctly. That's quite admirable.
48 minutes after the hour, a tribute to the late Hugh Downs, a good friend of mine and a friend of many out there, a gentleman who probably had more time on radio and television than any human. We continue with Mark Beckman, the book, Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything. Mark, let's go to the callers as we say good morning to Detective Nolan. Detective, happy Mother's Day weekend, and nice to have you aboard. How are you, sir?
Same to you, Dr. Sky, and to your guest. Just want to let you know that I'm sitting outside right now. I'm watching the sky, actually. And I can report for the moment that Newark Airport is operating normally. The approaches, planes are landing on schedule and taking off. That's that. As for the AI, and my opinion on AI, AI is only as good or bad as the humans that control it. And I'll use the analogy of a car, a new car. You can drive it safely or you can drive it recklessly. It's the car performs as the human behind the wheel. And if AI was ever to get to the point of being self-aware, which I can't see happening in our lifetime, we have no worries. I have no worries about it because I believe that the humans that we should worry about, the ones who control the AI, those are the ones we should have concerns about if anything does go wrong or right. But that's my take.
Well, there's a lot of moving pieces, and I want to say, Detective Nolan, I haven't given up on what you had asked me because we're looking for, and we've reached out, and we will have, I assure you and the listeners, to talk about the concept of space medicine because so many people are concerned about some of the things that happen on short and long-duration space missions. Mark, your response to Detective Nolan.
Detective Nolan, first of all, I'm in New York City, so thank you so much for serving. I really appreciate the work you do. And it's interesting, I gave a speech in front of more than 500 mayors, and you just hit the crux of it. I spoke about the fact that we need to treat AI responsibly. It's like a tool, but this tool is a rocket ship for humans, and it allows for us to flex in so many ways. Other than the tool that I compared it to was actually a gun. It's funny that you're calling in, Detective, with this point. And I spoke about the fact that a gun doesn't kill someone. It's the human pulling the trigger that kills someone. And that's the same thing with AI. Like, we need to be responsible. But it's a slippery slope, and I'm sure the detective would agree, and you too, Dr. Sky, where at the end of the day, there are bad actors, and this can be used for ways that can be dangerous and could be bad. But at the end of the day, humans need to be accountable.
Mark, well said. Detective Nolan, thank you for your call. And, just on the sideline, Detective, I spent 22 years with the Maricopa County Sheriff's Office out here. So maybe sometime offline we can talk about how to, go and protect your six and stay safe, as they say. Nice to have you call. Thank you, sir.
Dr. Scott, can I weigh in for a second and talk about how AI is being used in like surveillance situations now and all?
Yeah, I would like you to, sure. And we're trying to jump on a couple of callers here too. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, I'll just say quickly, like one thing that comes to mind when the detective calls is the idea of facial recognition software. And it's so advanced right now. Of course, China has like the most powerful facial recognition software on the planet. But we are using it here in the States already. It's being used in a small department at Miami Police Department. And in New York City, where we have over 80 billion cyber events a week, according to their chief technology officer. He reported this on my show some future day. We're also looking at situations where facial recognition software might be implemented to help protect the public, too.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Detective Nolan. And Mark, we move forward. Let's say good morning to JT. Thank you for joining us on the Dr. Sky Experience.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. I was thinking about how our president is trying to bring back manufacturing to our country to make it a big part of our country in order to, grow jobs and things like that. And I was wondering if AI is going to have how would it have a part in that, in manufacturing, the development of that?
Great question, JT. Mark, very good.
So the day after the inauguration, President Trump assembled at the White House with three tech leaders. It was Masa Son from SoftBank, Larry Ellison from Oracle, and Sam Altman from OpenAI. And these guys pledged $500 billion, $500 billion in building hyperscale data centers. This is the cornerstone of artificial intelligence. It's not the sexiest part, so people don't talk about it a lot, but we're going to need hyperscale data centers to empower the massive amount of compute that's required to run AI. In turn, this is going to create, in my opinion, a lot of wealth, a lot of opportunity, and a tremendous amount of jobs, although a lot of them will be automated. Admittedly, I predict a lot of these hyperscale data centers will be automated and robotic. Interestingly enough, I think it was Rick who called earlier and spoke about the idea of energy.
Correct,
he was touching a little bit on energy, and that's another component to the AI ecosystem. It's algorithm, which most of our discussion has been on. I mentioned hyperscale data centers as it relates to the compute, but we need a tremendous amount of power also to run these hyperscale data centers. And I predict that President Trump is talking now about reactivating these coal mines that have been dormant for a long time. I think a new use of these coal mines could be also to fuel the power required for these hyperscale data centers. So don't be surprised if you see these coal mine communities that have been, kind of suffering for many, many years now, stand back up, literally powering these hyperscale data centers. Mm-hmm.
That is amazing. JT, your follow-up, if you have a follow-up to Mark. Sorry.
Thank you. I was thinking about how, for the most part, in order to have access to AI, you need to have some type of access to a computer. Isn't that correct?
Not necessarily. So everybody has a mobile phone these days. It feels like the entire world does. And this is where I got to tell you, the most value to my book is where I'm going to hit right now. Literally, you can access so many tremendous tools today, including a lot that I'm mentioning, like, for example, these AI search engines, which now already have 10% of the population using them instead of like Google, right on your mobile phone. And it gives you access to creating business plans, marketing activation, original content. You could do it all in the power of your palm on your mobile phone.
Interesting. Thank you, JT, for joining us. Hope you'll continue to stay with this radio show with questions and comments, as our goal is to open up the minds of many out there on things that you probably don't hear every day, not only from the realms of astronomy, space, aviation, and weather, but as we have our special guest, Mark Beckman, in technology. Mark, as we wrap it up here, going to the top of the hour, you get the last word, of course, but how do people get in touch with you? You sound like you have a lot to offer out there for individuals who want to stay in touch, not only by getting the book, and obviously, where can they get the book?
So the book, Some Future Day, How AI is Going to Change Everything, is available now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Target, and other major booksellers. And they could find me on social media at Mark Beckman, MarkBeckman. And Steve, I want to tell you, thank you. I can't tell you how much I appreciate being included in your show this evening. You really are super impressive, super professional, and super intelligent. And it's just such an honor to speak with you today. It's just amazing, and I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Mark, you're so welcome, and we hope to have you back here again. Again, one of 12 chapters in here. But again, just give us a sign-off to the whole, positivity of this, the age of imagination. And believe me, like I said at the earlier parts of the program, not everybody has to accept that this is without any fault or any part of nefarious things. Who knows what can happen? But in the good side, what would you give us so people will walk away from this interview with a little more positivity than what we hear in everyday news about, all horrible things we're hearing about? How about some positivity from AI?
Yeah.
What would you say?
Yeah, for sure. Well, first of all, I believe that artificial intelligence is going to fundamentally change society for the better within 3 to 5 years. And I think that artificial intelligence will become the underpinning for creating new value in individuals' careers, family life, and community life. And you'll see this work. We're going to have all kinds of new benefits as it relates to extending lifespans because of advances in medicine, access to more food, all kinds of new experiences that will free people up from the monotonous tasks that we all hate so they could spend more time with their loved ones, their friends, their family. Artificial intelligence will make the world a better place.
Sounds good, and I appreciate the positivity because we need a shot in the arm every once in a while from some of the unfortunate news that we hear every day, and obviously the beat goes on. But wouldn't it be wonderful, Mark, and I'm dreaming here, but on a positive side in the age of imagination, if somehow the golden rule was the rule of the law of the world instead of some of the things that we see. I appreciate your time and hope to have you back here, and happy Mother's Day weekend to you and all the listeners. As we approach the top of the hour, ladies and gentlemen, just a reminder from the world of the sky, which we do talk about. We had Detective Nolan out there keeping his eye on the sky for us. But across the nation and around the world, a Russian, if it hasn't already entered the atmosphere, a Cosmos spacecraft that was headed to Venus originally but never got there, is now in its death throes. It's going down to, incinerate or crash somewhere in the world. Not to be alarmist, but we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, and many other things as we continue here on the Dr. Sky Experience with great guests from these realms and beyond. Thank you for joining us.
Impact confirmed. The Slayer has been activated.
Demonic threat level increasing.
Hold the line!
All the power of hell cowering before one man.
id Software presents Doom, The Dark Ages. Available now on Xbox Series X and S, PlayStation 5, and PC.
Rated M for mature.
Morning decisions. A creamy mocha frappuccino drink? A sweet vanilla? Maybe a smooth caramel or that white chocolate mocha. Whichever you choose, delicious coffee awaits. Start your day with bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drinks. Pick up a bottle near you wherever you buy your groceries.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner...
You may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
Home means something different to everyone. But with Rocket Mortgage, home can mean even more. It can mean a college education, taming your high-interest debt, even a renovation. We've made it easier than ever to use your home equity. That home you worked so hard for, now it can work hard for you. Call 800-4ROCKET or visit rocket.com to find out more.
Rocket Mortgage, LLC, licensed in all 50 states. NMLSConsumerAccess.org, number 3030.
Always look to the sky. The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. 6 minutes after the hour. Thank you as we move into your weekend for joining us on the Dr. Sky Experience. I'm your night bird on the highway to the heavens and do appreciate the comments that we get. If you'd like to, of course, email me, it's simply DRSKY, Dr. Sky at WABCRadio.com. And just in case you have folks out there that want to hear a repeat of this particular show and all other podcasts that we do with the Dr. Sky Experience, it's simple. Simply go to WABCRadio.com or RedAppleAudioNetworks.com. As we continue on this Mother's Day weekend, ladies and gentlemen, I thought it very appropriate for this particular hour. I'm sure you'll join me in what I consider to be a tribute not only to our American military, in this particular case, a gentleman who's flown with the United States Marine Corps, not a retired man in the Marine Corps, but always a Marine, and for those that served our country, and, by the way, for all the mothers out there that also made a sacrifice when their husbands and loved ones were away fighting wars, they themselves were the singular person raising children. As we talk a tribute to Mother's Day, who could say it better than Rudyard Kipling, as he quoted, and I repeat, God could not be everywhere, and therefore he made mothers, end quote. Our special guest of this particular hour is Don Eggspuehler. Who is he? He wrote a book called Letters to Mom, from his experiences in the Marine Corps, boot camp, flight school, Vietnam, from 1969 to 1972. He flew one of the most iconic aircraft. For those of you out there that know military aviation, for those of you that do not, the Grumman A6 Intruder. With that, I'd like to welcome our special guest, Don Eggspuehler. Thank you for joining us as you're in some location in Texas. Good morning to you, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Dr. Sky. I appreciate you having me on.
Well, Don, I appreciate you, and believe me, folks, this story, I think, is so apropos, not only for those who served our country. In your particular case, we'll talk about some of the details, but a book entitled Letters to Mom. Tell us the reason for the book. It's pretty self-evident, but tell us this experience, because I want to share it as we move into Mother's Day weekend.
Well, it was a fairly simple thing, actually. We had been living with the Vietnam War for 10 years at this point when I was graduating from college. And I got my draft notice on the day I graduated from college in 1969. So I had 30 days to make up my mind if I was going to go into the Army and I'd already got my pilot's license at Ohio State. So I thought, well, I've got a degree now and I've got a pilot's license, so maybe I can get into a flight program. And that happened with the Marine Corps. And I really thought when I joined the Marines that, another 2-3 years of flight school and this war will be over, because they were already in the Paris peace talks at this point.
Exactly.
So again, it was one of those things that I said to my mom that, hey, Mom, she said, you better write me almost every day. And I said, I will. I'll keep you up to date on what's going on. But the whole thing was just to make her feel a little bit more at ease, because at this point, everybody was pretty well upset about Vietnam and knew it was, it'd been going on for 10 years. And just everybody wanted it to end. So that's what it started. I started writing her letters regularly while I was at boot camp, and then all the way through flight school. And and especially when I went overseas, because I just couldn't just call her on the phone. Had to do it through letters and tapes and so forth.
Yes, and, that's the power of love, and we're going to exemplify that here. If you don't mind, sir, I'm going to take the liberty of reading this in your book, and it's dedicated, let me go ahead and pronounce this properly, a dedication to your mom, Eleanor Joan Eggspuehler. Beautiful mom, and obviously here, sir, this is the letter that, if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and read because it's very powerful, and it holds a lot of emotion. Dated May 26, 1979. Dear Mom, this will probably be the last letter that I ever write to you. As you know, this book is a collection of the letters and tapes that I sent to you while I was in the Marines. You saved them all, and for 6 years you said that you were going to read them again someday. I'm sorry. I only got the first 3 sections edited and rewritten in time for you to read, but I'll finish them all and dedicate them to your memory. After today, Mom, I can't communicate with you by letters, tapes, telephone, or face-to-face anymore. But now I feel that I can talk to you any time and any place. We will all miss you very much, Mom, and wish you peace. Love, Don. How beautiful is that, my friend? That is incredible. So, it's a very powerful story. Yeah.
Well, the funny thing about that is it was 6 years after I had come back home, and I'm married now and have a couple of daughters, and I went up to visit her because she had cancer, and I knew it might be one of the last times she got to see the grandchildren. And when I was up there, I said, by the way, Mom, did you ever save any of those letters from Vietnam? And she says, oh, yeah, I've got them all. They're up in the attic. And I'm going to get them down and read them again. And I said, no, you're not. You're not going to do that. And I said, let me take them back to Dallas, because I'd love to read it. And I got some closure reading the letters again, because I'd always had a guilt complex about coming back from Vietnam without any injuries. And we lost 7 guys in my squadron that were shot down. So I started reading through the letters, and I thought, wow, I'm going to put these first of all, in chronological order. And I thought I'd just make a scrapbook for her, but a lot of them were handwritten, and some of them were tapes. And so I said, I'm going to just take a funny story out of each letter and type it up and put this in a book for her. And I gave it to her as a Christmas present. And I'm really glad I did, because she passed away about 6 months later.
Oh, wow.
But it was one of the best presents I ever gave to her.
Well, that's a tribute, obviously, not only just on Mother's Day, but for all the people out there, the connection that we, of course, want to bring together on these airwaves, one of the most powerful stations in the world, is the power of love that comes through at this time of year, or as that should, as we talk about moms. And I mentioned this before. I don't know if you heard this as the intro, and I'm not reading this, I'm just talking this from my heart, that it's not only a dedication to all the mothers out there for the sacrifice that they made raising children, but what about the mothers who are married to people like yourself that are all away fighting wars? I don't know what that's like. I'm not a mother, but I can only go back to my mother's story. She didn't go through that, as my father was not in the military. But it's a tribute, obviously, and I want to give that big shout out here on this radio station to those that we love. But this is even, how do I say this? I don't know if you're aware of this, Don, but we have another proud Marine here on this radio station, Talk Radio 77 WABC, Greg Kelly, who's also, I never say retired, that's a terrible word in the military. They're always what they are. Another proud Marine who was a Harrier pilot, and that's another amazing story that I'm sure he could tell better than I could do justice to right now. But no, talk a little bit more about this, because that gives us what? That gives us this eternal feeling of love that goes well beyond the lifespan that we all have here, and that's a beautiful tribute, Don. So we appreciate you coming on here. And I know it's a little early in your time zone, but hey, it's never too early to talk about those we love, right?
Oh, that's true. And I did. I came from a real close family. I was the oldest of 5 kids. And again, we were a very tight-knit group, coming from a small community in Iowa Falls, Iowa. Mm-hmm. And I had gone away to college at Ohio State, but when you're away just a couple states away, you can always talk on the phone, so you don't need to write letters. But the military was different, and I'm so glad now that she saved those letters. First of all, because I really got some closure going back through them. And it's funny. I after she passed away, I had this book, this manuscript, in my closet for 45 years.
Yes.
And I got it out and I reread it again, and I thought, wow, I'll bet some other guys that went through this or their parents went through this might get some closure from reading these letters. And so that's why I went ahead and published it. And I've really gotten some good feedback from a lot of guys that were over there. Many of them, many years before I had to go to Vietnam. They all had that same feeling about love for their parents and their siblings back home.
No, you sure exemplify it here today and this morning. But, we're going to talk about your life here because also for many people out there that are aviation fans, we're going to shift gears a little with your okay, that, how did you get started to go into the Marine Corps? Was it by choice or was it just by, hey, that draft number came and, oh, boy, here I go, I show up and I'm on the bus and they shave my head and the rest is what?
Yeah,
how did you get into the Marine Corps?
That's the choice you have at that point. When you get drafted, and most people don't understand the draft like we did back then, but you got 30 days and you report to the Army, and if you're a private, you're going to get about 6 months training and you find yourself in the jungles with a rifle in your hand. So I said, I want to at least do something in the military that I enjoy, and I enjoyed flying. And so I was lucky enough, now that I had a college degree, to get into an officer program and into a flight program. And again, I didn't think that I was ever going to have to go to Vietnam because 2 more years of flight school and another squadron. But I'll be darned, 3 years later, our whole squadron was moved from Iwakuni, Japan, into Thailand to fly missions every day. We were in the DMZ area primarily.
And we're going to get into that, Don, here in this show because, I'm a big fan of aviation. I was in the Army, United States Army for a short time, but not a pilot. And I just want to highlight this. I mean, you're the guy who was the driver. You sit side by side in this A6 Intruder manufactured by the Grumman Aircraft Corporation, an airplane that retired sadly back in 1997. But many would say and not argue that it was replaced with the FA-18 jet fighters that we see today, protecting America. But then let's talk about from the human side of that. You go into the Marine Corps, and obviously you have this college degree. And what was that like? I mean, the excitement must be overwhelming when you're chosen to become a pilot. What's flight school like for people like yourself? And we may have, before you answer, we may have a bunch of listeners out there who also have questions about the military aviation. And the number here, always for you, and ladies and gentlemen, calling wherever you're listening, 1-800-848-9222 to share in the story of Don Eggspuehler. Always a Marine Corps, boot camp, flight school, Vietnam, 1969 to 1972. His great tribute to his mom, obviously during the Mother's Day period. Why can't it always be every day letters to mom? What's it like? I mean, it must be exhilaration when you go, wow, I've been selected to fly these birds. Talk about that.
Well, it was. And again, I was lucky in that I had been through a lot of this training of, understanding navigation and aeronautical charts and just a lot of the flight, jargon that you learn while you're going through flight training. So I had been through this before, and it was much more intense and much more professional, obviously, with the Marine Corps. And they do all their flight training through the Navy, the Navy flight schools. And most people think of the Marine pilots as just helicopter pilots, and probably about 98% of the pilots in the Marine Corps were helicopter pilots. They're in there for close air support for the Marines on the ground. But a small percentage are flying jets and dropping bombs or other close air support for Marines. And
well, you see all the Marine Corps during Vietnam, as you know, sir, with the F-4 Phantoms and the whole paint scheme.
Oh, yeah.
The camo paint scheme and the heavy load of weapons on there. We know a little bit about these. I'm not a pilot, so I don't come across always honest and always defer to the people who are and those that, of course, will be. It's great. Your story, of course, I'm sure is inspirational to so many of the young people today that want to join not only the Space Force, but as we talk here today with you about the Marine Corps and other great branches of the United States military. But this aircraft that you're flying, I mean, I'm doing all this research here, and I want to let the people know, I've sent it to you. My brother, Joe Cates, is obviously very much involved in the photo side of the aviation world. So here, folks, if you're interested in military aviation, I know, Don, you gave it a thumbs up. Go to this website, photorecon.net, photorecon.net. I know you told me you enjoyed it. It's a military compilation of military aircraft and all air shows around the world and the nation. And a lot of people who never get a lot of credit. So with that website, Don, I know you enjoyed it also. At least that's what you told me, right?
Yes, yeah, it was. It was very informative and lots of great pictures, obviously.
Let's talk. Yeah, go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Did you have a...
Well, here we go with the A6 Intruder. I mean, this aircraft, in case people don't know, this is so amazing. So after you're gutting out of flight school, you're talking about being attached to a flight wing, and I want to talk about that. It's VMA 533, the Hawks. And the motto of that flight squadron in Latin is In Hoc Signo Vinces, or Vinces, and it stands for what? By this sign, conquer. So every flight wing, military-wise, has their motto, their goal, and such. But this is amazing. Talk about VMA 533 and the time you're there in the Hawks. I mean, this is an amazing squadron, which is an all-weather fighter. In case people don't know this, you're flying missions that you could fly in, pardon my language, the crappiest of weather to deliver your ordnance. What's that feeling like to fly this machine? It must be amazing.
Well, it really was. It was very sophisticated for its time because it had all the capabilities to, and very rudimentary computers and very good radars. So you could fly at night or you could fly in bad weather and still drop bombs pretty precisely on target. Now, again, our missions were kind of half and half at first. We were flying day missions that were visual bombing raids in support of the troops, but we were the only aircraft at that time that could fly night missions into North Vietnam, and that was one of our primary objectives, was to stop the trucks and tanks and so forth that were going down the Ho Chi Minh Trail and down from North Vietnam into South Vietnam. So it was those missions were completely radio silent. Once you went into North Vietnam, you were on your own. You didn't have any other radio contact with anybody because
that's amazing.
They couldn't track you. So, but the problem there is you're also flying at a lower altitude, around probably 3,000 feet, and going down the roads. And they got smart to this after a while. They'd hear us fly over, and so they just radio down the road to their buddies, and who would just start shooting bullets straight up in the air. And
amazing.
That's how a lot of our guys got hit. There was no warning, not like a SAM missile or something like that. So it was, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, you described this aircraft, and we're going to get into deep things about the missions of what you can talk about, because if I'm correct here, see if I have my information correct from research, you could carry more bomb loads than any other aircraft other than a B-52. So that aircraft, sadly or funny in many ways to your own Marine pilots, was called what? Double Ugly, Drumstick, or the Iron Tadpole. Am I right? That's what some of them called your A6 Intruder. And Don, just in case people don't know or have not seen the movie and they're wondering, scratching their head, why is Dr. Sky giving such credibility, such airtime to such an amazing mission? Because you know why? Because it's all about the freedom that every one of us deserves here in a very horrible time. I'm not taking sides to say why these wars should have happened. Of course, they never should have. But this A6 is just incredible. Don, the movie is Flight of the Intruder, in case people are wondering, what are we talking about, right? I don't know, yeah. In a movie about the airplane.
It was a good airframe. It really was a strong aircraft built to land on carriers. I didn't have to land on carriers, thank goodness, but it also would carry 28 500-pound bombs and several thousand pounds of fuel. So it had about, you could fly 4-hour missions in that thing and have enough fuel. And 28 500-pound bombs, we'd usually make 4 or 5 runs on a target, and we'd always have a wingman that would be running right behind us, so we could watch to make sure they didn't take fire behind them and that they couldn't see or something like that.
Yeah, and the man behind the curtain told me something. You could carry 30 bombs if you took the landing gear doors off.
Most of the time, most of the time we had like 18 or something like that because you'd usually have a couple of drop tanks that were for fuel, extra fuel. So that took away a few of the bombs, but they were a pretty lethal machine.
That's it. And, it is on the lighter side, though. When I was talking to an old gentleman who was higher in the rank, he wasn't way up there like a general or something in the Marine Corps. He looked at me and he goes, "Young man," he goes, "you ever serve your country?" And I said, "I was in the Army, sir, for a short time." And he looked at me and he said, "Yeah." He goes, "You know what Army stood for?" And I go, "What's that, sir?" And he says, "Ain't ready for Marines yet." Wow. What a blow off I got, huh? Folks, if you have questions, talking on the serious side, here's Don Eggspuehler. He, of course, a Marine pilot, not a retired Marine, always a Marine. Semper Fi to them and to all those that serve our country in their own mottos for each branch of the service. We're talking about his letters to Mom. Significant. Why? Because of this beautiful time and we celebrate the love of our mothers, whether they're living or they've passed on to the infinite. His story, of course, letters to Mom, his Marine Corps time, boot camp, flight school, Vietnam. He, of course, dedicates his book, and his book, of course, dedicated to the memory of his mother, Eleanor Joan Eggspuehler. Interesting. So going back to the airplane here, it's like you're doing these missions. I mean, you have these briefings, and you have people help load up the bomb missions, and you never know. I mean, a lot of people never came back, right? They were shot down from ground fire or SAM missiles, which we'll talk about in the next half hour. There must be some nail-biting experiences right in the beginning.
Oh, no question. And like I said, those night missions, especially when you're in complete radio silence and it's the middle of the night, we're the only aircraft up there in the middle of the night. It was, if somebody got shot down, it was a problem because we wouldn't know about it right away. They just wouldn't come back. And in the daytime, there were so many helicopters and other airplanes in the air that if somebody got hit, it was known pretty quickly that they were in trouble or that somebody saw it and where they went down. But not so at night. So that was a lot scarier missions flying.
Well, here's a technical question on the A6 Intruder. I mean, you were in there. Is it a conducive thing? I mean, is it better that they designed it that way, that the pilots are sitting side by side instead of a front and back? Like in many other aircraft, they have a person in the back, the radar wizzo, as they call them. I mean, is that that's the way they built it? But obviously, it was a better configuration than sitting front and back.
I think in this case it was because again, it's kind of like on an airliner. You got a pilot and co-pilot right there.
Yes,
you're both working as a team, and it's so amazing that after you fly together for a long period of time, you almost don't even need to talk to each other. You know what the other guy's going to do, and we're busy. You're both setting up the weapon systems, the radars, the computers, getting the targets locked on, and the bombs automatically releasing by the computer. And that determines, your altitude, your airspeed, the ballistics of the bomb, and the moving target that you're going after, which was a truck or something on the road. My goodness, a lot of sophistication clear back in 1970s that we had. It really was. It was a pretty amazing airplane.
Oh, you bet. And obviously retired, as we mentioned before, around 1997. Replaced what? By the F-18 fighter, of course. We see them at all different naval air stations around there, and, of course, carriers and so many things like that. Don, we are coming up on the hard break, as they call it in radio, and more with you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you'd like to get in the conversation, maybe you're someone in the military who served in the Marine Corps or the Navy or any of the branches of the service and have an interest not only in the topic of dedication to our mothers for this particular weekend, appropriate Mother's Day weekend. Don Eggspuehler is our guest. We'll continue with him on the other side of these announcements here on the Dr. Sky Experience, where? Here on Talk Radio 77 WABC.
The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hi, this is Shirley McLean. I am having a wonderful time talking to Dr. Sky. Since I've spent a lot of my time looking up, I love to discuss what is underneath. And always remember to keep your eyes to the sky.
All that I am, or hope to be, I owe to my angel mother, you're my first best friend. We continue here on the Dr. Sky Experience, 31 minutes after the hour. Our special guest, kind of a dual purpose in our interview today and this morning, with our friend, Don Eggspuehler, always a Marine. His book, Letters to Mom, his time in the Marine Corps, boot camp, flight school, Vietnam, 1969 to 1972. Of course, a book dedicated to the memory of his mother, as of course we remember our mothers, both living and in the infinite. We continue, Don. Thank you for being with us. Let's go to the callers here. They light up the phone lines, and we go to the front of the line with them. Good morning to Robert. Robert, good morning. Thanks for joining us. Your comment to Don or your question.
Oh, good morning, gentlemen. Thank you, Don. I really appreciate your service, and because you made it back together in one piece. And great success. Great success. Do you have any information or experience you could share about the F-111 with the TFR?
Well, I don't know anything really about the F-111s, and that was all in the Air Force. Basically, the Marines just had F-4s and A-6s back when I was flying. So actually, the two other squadrons that went in with us into Nampong, Thailand, were F-4 squadrons. So we got to know those guys pretty well. And they were faster, but they couldn't carry as many bombs. So, and they couldn't fly night missions like we could. So it was an interesting
Did you ever
time.
fly the F-105 Thud?
No, that's another Air Force plane, and
that's a big one too, Don. That's a big
one too. Yeah, actually, the F-111 was a good-sized airplane as well. Meant for long-range bombing missions. But,
well, gentlemen, I have a quick story, and sorry to jump in on what Don is telling us, but Robert, this is interesting. Here's a funny story. I think Don will get a kick out of it. A long, long time ago, in another lifetime, I was up in Plattsburgh, New York, and there was this Air Force base, right, Robert and Don? So I'm in a Howard Johnson's hotel. Remember how long ago that was, right? And I'm lying in bed. It was like 6 o'clock in the morning, and I kid you not, I was knocked out of bed by the vibration. This is no joke. And as I looked out the front of the hotel, guess what it was? An F-111 firing those big afterburners. I couldn't believe how noisy that thing was. That was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Imagine that. Robert, were you in the military? Tell us your story.
Oh, no. I was too young or too old. I was in between all the time, so never got to do it. Unless I would have enlisted as a volunteer.
Well, gentlemen, we had another quick story from our Aviation Chronicles. We were covering the story of the Air Force Thunderbirds for years, and we got to talk to an old gentleman who was a retired general in the Air Force. We should say always in the Air Force. But he was telling us he was part of the Thunderbird squadron when they flew them as they fly those jets together like the F-16 for the performances. And he was saying that his airplane was so big that when he came down on the runway, he dragged the tail of that thing and actually set it on the tail on fire. And I'm not supposed to tell you who the name of that was, but he caught a hell for tail dragging that thing. So that's interesting. So, no, seriously, Robert, I appreciate you. You seem to know a lot about aircraft, so thanks for joining us. That's awesome.
Yes, I've been in the manufacturing end of the aerospace industry, and that was my contribution to our national defense.
Well, thank you, and God bless you, because without you, they wouldn't have a tail for the airplane to drag or anything to make it fly. So thank you, sir, for your time.
That's right.
Don, this is interesting. It gets even more interesting as we talk about this. I know to some out there, they may take exception and go, oh, we were bombing people and nobody likes war. But, hey, we have our instructions, right or wrong on this. We know that this particular event happened. It's history. But in that particular mission, if you can describe it, you're flying, as you said, some day missions and some night missions into territory that's unfriendly to you. You have to be very careful. So who is in the airplane? Is the pilot, you're the command in the left or the right side? Tell us about that. Who's in charge for the airplane and who's in charge for the avionics?
No question, the pilot's in command of the airplane. And,
okay.
And again, there was so much avionics involved and electronic countermeasures and weapon systems available that, it kept both people real busy, as I said. I was just going to say the day missions, Robert just mentioned the Air Force. we were very reliant on the Air Force helping us acquire our targets and go in and mark them with smoke rockets. They had OV-10s back then, which is a dual prop, turboprop, acrobatic airplane, and they'd be right down on the treetops. And these guys were called FACs, or forward air controllers.
Right.
And they would bring us in, and we would rendezvous with them, and then they would roll in on the target and tell us if it was a tank or whatever, and then they'd put a smoke rocket on it. And then they'd tell us where friendlies, if there were any friendlies involved, and what the winds were, and so forth. So they would call our what's called BDA, or bomb damage crew, after each run. And as we pulled off the target, our wingman would come in and drop their load, and he'd be giving us directions the whole time on these day missions, because he could see what damage we were doing and if we hit the target or not. And again, we didn't have that on the night missions. You're by yourself on the night missions. But
yeah, you're right. The OV-10 Broncos, we've seen them in many air shows and restoration airplane. That's an amazing plane. I wouldn't even know how to begin to fly it. And then the little tiny guy who's up there, many people who may know their aviation, the little tiny airplane called the Bird Dog, that was just a little single-engine plane that you'd see probably at some little airports, but it was used as a forward observer, if I'm correct.
Right, yeah. But I'll tell you, those guys, talk about brave. Those Air Force pilots right down on the treetops, just like the helicopters, except, they're getting shot at by the people that they're marking the targets. And so a lot of those guys got hit as well. They're right down there in the action. And we're rolling in usually from about 12,000 feet and in a dive bomb pattern, about a 30 to 45 degree dive angle, and coming in, and we drop pickle the bombs at about 6,000 feet and pull off in a 4G pull. So again, you're pointed right at the target, the bombs keep going, and we pull off, and then again, it depends on how accurate the run was to find out from the FAC if you'd hit the target or not. But yeah,
John, you must have had you must have had a good stomach and no Dramamine available. I mean, you're pulling how many G's in some of these? I mean, that's incredible. That's just wild.
Most of the time, it was a 4 to 6G environment, and that's just for a few seconds at a time. And again, you're jinking off the target. In other words, you're going back and forth so that you're not an easy target to hit, because that's when you're the most vulnerable. It's when you're at the bottom of the run, you're pulling off. You're the closest to them, and that's when they would try to hit you, is right after you release the bomb. So, but most of the pilots and people back then were used to pulling G's, and you have a G suit that inflates when you start pulling G's, and that keeps the blood from pooling down in your legs. It keeps it more up into your body cavity and keeps you from blacking out.
We know all too well about what you're saying. I was given an opportunity to fly backseat in an F-16 at a Luke Air Force Base, and I decided not to do it. But please don't make fun of me, folks. The reason is my brother, who's 13 years younger than I, he jumped at the chance, he was going wild. But he was in a back mission where they simulated over the Barry Goldwater range here in Arizona, both men and male and female pilots doing simulated combat missions. And he's saying, my goodness, they were pulling 8 and 9 G's in there. You know what I said? Thank God I didn't go. That was my way of saying it. Sorry, folks, that wasn't for me. Okay, let's talk this way. We got so many people that want to talk to our special guest here, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go to Al. Good morning, Al. Thank you for being on the Dr. Sky Experience. How are you this morning?
Hey, Dr. Sky, another great show, and I'm enjoying hearing your guest. And thank you for his service, and happy Mother's Day to both of you guys, okay?
Thank you.
I had a question. You're welcome. I had a question. A couple things. By any chance, were you aware of Senator McCain? He had an incident on one of those carriers. I think he was an admiral's son. And did you ever hear of a C-130 landing? I think it was on the Forrestal. I mean, you would never think a plane that big could land.
Now, by the time we were in Vietnam, Senator McCain had been shot down several years before that. He was actually in an A-6 as well. but he was a POW, I think, for almost 5 or 6 years, if I'm not mistaken. And what a hero that guy was, because he was the son of a very prominent military officer, and probably could have gotten special treatment, but he didn't want it. He didn't take it. And he was injured, too, when he ejected. So he had a bunch of broken bones. And, again, he wouldn't give in to them. So I held the highest regard for Senator McCain. He's just an amazing guy.
Al, your follow-up before we go to the break here. Please comment if you choose to.
I wanted to know, did he ever hear anything about 100 people getting killed in an incident with McCain when he landed on one of the carriers? And also, did he ever hear of a C-130, a plane that large, actually doing carrier landings before the Greyhound got there?
Gosh, I don't know much about that. I really don't. I'm sorry. But I know I rode in a lot of C-130s. It's like a big box car, and they were powerful for carrying a lot of freight and weapons and so forth from one place to another.
Al, I do think there was a C-130 that did land on a carrier, and I know my own experience. We were flown out from Naval Air Station San Diego on the COD, on the gray airplane, I guess the mail plane as we would call it. We did a carrier landing, and I'll tell you one thing, that was unbelievable when they boosted our sorry-but-you-know-whats off the deck on that catapult. That's an experience that I'll never forget. But Al, thank you for joining us all the time here, and see how we get these great guests, and obviously in salute to his mom and other mothers, his book, of course, which we're really highlighting here, Letters to Mom, Don Eggspuehler's dedication to his mother, writing to her. Of course, our hearts go out to all those folks that gave their lives in defense of America's freedom. And this is an important story about American exceptionalism, the love of our mothers, those that we do truly love, and people who served our country. So, Al, thank you for joining us. We do appreciate it. And, Don, we'll be right back. We have another commercial announcement here and a break, and we'll be right back here on the Dr. Sky Experience.
Clorox Sentiva smells like lavender. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
All right, that could go on for a while. Experience the long-lasting freshness of Clorox Sentiva. Available in Clorox Sentiva Lavender-Scented Bleach. Use as directed.
Experience a progressive lens engineered with AI from Essilor, powered by individual measurements of your visual behavior. A lens personalized to you by an Essilor expert. Discover Verilux XR Track and enjoy instantly sharp vision in motion and seamless transitions from near to far. Find your local Essilor expert today at Essilor.com.
Nurses, are you tired of spending weeks or even months finding the perfect job that matches your specialty with your ideal shift and salary? LinkedIn has improved your job search experience. Search by specialty, the shift you want to work, and the salary you want to make. Go to linkedin.com/nurses and begin searching today. That's linkedin.com/nurses.
Note, side effects may include less time finding the perfect job, working a shift that you love with a salary that can take you to St. Thomas, Jamaica, and continuous smiling because of how simple this process was.
Hey guys, have you heard of Goldbelly? It's this amazing site where they ship the most iconic famous foods from restaurants across the country, anywhere, nationwide. I've never found a more perfect gift than food. They ship Chicago deep dish pizza, New York bagels, Maine lobster rolls, and even Ina Garten's famous cakes. So if you're looking for a gift for the food lover in your life, head to goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT.
The Dr. Sky Experience is on the air. 77 WABC. Now, here's Dr. Sky.
Hi, this is Bill Mooney from Lost in Space and Babylon 5, The Twilight Zone, etc. But what's more important than that is you're listening to the Dr. Sky Show. And that's a good thing, a real good thing.
When you look into your mother's eyes, you know that is the purest love that you can find. 47 minutes after the hour, Don Eggspuehler, always a Marine. His book, Letters to Mom, as we talk with him and you, ladies and gentlemen, as we wrap up this particular hour. Let's say good morning to Joaquin. Your question or comment to our guest. Joaquin, are you there?
There's the ding. Good day to you, gentlemen. You know, it's interesting. Actually, at the age of 17, I myself enlisted in the Marine Corps, but I wound up not going because I enlisted in the summertime and it delayed, and I got shot deer hunting the day after Thanksgiving.
Oh,
so
no.
Anyway,
yeah.
So anyway, I really want to thank you, Don, for your service, you know, and the Vietnam War is just one of those things that, you know, so many guys were just so underappreciated. And whenever the topic comes up, of course, I always like to bring up a man, you know, retired Admiral James Bond Stockdale, Ross Perot's running mate. That guy, you know, his story is quite incredible.
Yes, it is.
What happened to him after he was shot down, and he was awarded the Medal of Honor for it. But, you know, I've known a lot of guys who went to Vietnam, and the vast majority of the ones that I knew had said that they almost felt that they could have won the war if they were allowed to. And on the same token, I also had some friends in college that were actually Vietnamese, and they escaped the fall of Saigon. They escaped the communists, you know. So it's a very interesting and a heart-tugging story all the way around.
Sure is.
Well,
absolutely. Joaquin, I appreciate your time. Don, please go ahead.
I agree with you, Joaquin, in that I think a lot of guys really felt that they weren't appreciated when we came back. And again, you can understand it because it had been going on for so long. And they've been watching it on TV every day, watching our boys get shot up and carried off on stretchers on helicopters and so forth. So it was a sad time that for a lot of Vietnam veterans, and that's kind of why I wrote this book. I wrote the book initially just for my mom to keep her from worrying too much. But the reason I published it was for other people that have, or especially mothers and so forth, or older people that had sons that had to go fight in Vietnam. And it was a heart-tugging time, like you said. One of the things I did want to mention is that at the very end of our tour, you said that you thought we could have won the war if we really wanted to. You're absolutely right, because I mean, with all the air power we had, if we had just kept up the bombing on Hanoi like we did that Christmas,
Operation Linebacker, right?
They would have, they would have given up right away on this war. We could have won it in a month, I think. But the politics at the time, we were playing defense all the time, and you know you can't win a game playing defense the whole time.
No, you cannot.
You got to go on the offense.
Joaquin, thank you. I'm sorry to cut you guys short here, but I want to try to get in as many callers as possible. And Don, excuse me for jumping in here. Thank you, Joaquin, for your commentary about our military and those that served. Let's say good morning to Dave in Arizona. Dave, good morning. You're on with Don Eggspuehler.
Hey, good morning, Semper Fi Marine. Hey, out here in Tucson, we have the Boneyard, and there's some A6s out there. It's a graveyard for aircraft. It's east of Tucson. And now I'm retired military. I retired in 95, and they called me back in 2003. They sent me to Yuma. And my goodness, man, you think it's hot here in Tucson. It's 10 degrees hotter in Yuma. And I got a chance to go to the Marine Corps Air Station and work with the Marines. They're good men. And, you know, and I was a paratrooper in the military. And you referenced the boxcar. That's a C-123, C-130 Hercules. I mean, I jumped out of many C-130s, 141s. And, you know, I mean, ain't nothing like jumping out of a perfectly good airplane.
You got it, Dave. It's a gathering of eagles here, and we salute all the military. God bless you out there in my state, in Arizona. Dave, it was 102 today, and many people may find that a little unusual. But here in Arizona, right, Dave? We know it's just another day. There you go. Don, isn't that a nice tribute there? There you go.
Yeah, it really was. You know, one thing I was going to try and mention is that toward the end of my book, and that over the Christmas, Bob Hope made a visit to our base in the middle of the jungle in Thailand. And he brought Red Fox and Miss World and Lola Falana and his wife, Dolores. And at this point, Bob Hope had gone, I think, to every year of the Vietnam War, had gone over to be with the troops. And he came that year for us. And I'll tell you that was probably one of the most deeply moving shows and performers I've ever seen in my life. And I think all the guys there would probably say the same thing. Amazing. He was just an amazing man.
I would love to have met him, and that would have been an amazing experience to boost the morale of people that are so far from home and missing their loved ones. That's amazing. It really is. Yeah, I got one more for you before we go to the top here, and that's the sad conclusion of this hour, but hopefully we'll do this again. In a quick encapsulation, you're flying, and no quick answer can do justice, but here it is. You're flying, and you're hearing tones, and that's the awesome and horrible thing called a SAM missile. That must be a nerve-wrenching experience to figure out that something's lighting you up and could blow you out of the sky, the SAM. Talk about it.
Oh, yeah. And again, we were flying around the DMZ area, so there weren't near as many SAMs there as there were up at the Hanoi locations. But, we had electronic gear that would tell us if there was a SAM locking on us, and red lights were going on all over the cockpit with in your ears going doo-doo, like that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, and then it really starts going crazy when it really does lock on you, and you can see if they fired it or not. And they weren't as accurate back then. They weren't near as accurate as they are today. But the way to avoid them was basically to point the airplane right at it and fly right at it for a few seconds if you could, and then pull away so it couldn't make the adjustments.
That's amazing.
It is a scary thing.
And that's what happened to Francis Powers when he was shot down May 1st, obviously in a much higher altitude aircraft that many people know about the U-2 story. That's amazing how those missiles, rather crude, I guess, in their technology, but they sure the hell worked, right, when they needed to. That's a sad story. Yeah, how many? But give us the quick synopsis.
Shot down most of the B-52s. The SAMs around Hanoi during that Christmas bombing. I think we lost something like 50 B-52s within about a 2-month period there. But they did enough damage that North Vietnam finally said, okay, we'll go to the peace table and we'll talk and we'll release POWs. And then we left. And what did they do? They just came right in and took over the country after that.
Yes.
So,
and I read about the A6 too, as we wrap it up here, that there was some incidents, and maybe not as many, but God forbid it happened at all, and it did, premature bomb detonations on some missions. When the bomb was released, somehow, I don't know, I'm not in that area, that the airplane was actually destroyed by a shorter premature bomb detonation. That's horrible. You're trying to drop the bomb, it's 500 pounds. You want it to get down to the target, not underneath your plane.
Well, and again, if you're carrying 28 500-pound bombs, they have a propeller on the front of the bomb that has a pin going through it when it's sitting on the airplane, so that keeps it from arming. But as soon as it's released from the plane, that pin pulls out and it starts spinning that propeller, and then it's armed, and so when it hits the ground, it explodes. Again, you always have the possibility that somebody that was hanging those bombs on the wing missed getting that pin in there properly or something, and there are accidents that happen. I mean, we've seen a couple F-18s just in the last couple weeks run off the carriers out there in the Red Sea because, there are mistakes that are made, and it's a very complex mission. So who knows? Again, that was always a possibility.
Well, Don, I want to thank you for being up, especially early. You're somewhere in the great state of Texas. We don't ask for your identity, location. But again, thank you for your service. Always a Marine, once a Marine, always a Marine, and every military person, no matter what branch of the service. When my time in the Army, anybody else that served, and also to our law enforcement out there, these are the stories we want to hear. But in this particular weekend, our reason for having you primarily is a salute to your mom, the book, Letters to Mom, your story, and the many letters that you've written to your mom, How do people get in touch with you? Just tell us. How do people get in touch with you?
Well, if they have interest in the book, it's on Amazon, and I have a website. It's called lifelessonsbooks.net. So lifelessonsbooks.net, it's got a bit about me in there and the books. And if you click on one of the books, like Letters to Mom, it'll take you right to Amazon to buy either the electronic version or the paperback or hardback. That's probably the easiest way for them to find it on Amazon. Just from my
Don, again, I can't thank you enough, and I want to come and shake your hand someday and sit down there and drink a Texas Shiner beer with you. That would be an awesome experience.
I'd love that.
Hey, I'm not trying to give I'm not trying to give a free promo, but hey, when we were down there during the eclipse last year, we were down in the heart of in the deep part of Texas, and I know that's awesome. It was a good time. We had a good time in Junction, Texas. I'm sure you know that place. There you go. We had a lot of fun. Don, thank you for your time. God bless you, and happy Mother's Day and Letters to Mom. That's why we had you. And long remembrance to all of our mothers living and that moved on to the infinite. We'll see you one day, but Don will be in touch. Thank you for your time, sir, to join us on the Dr. Sky Experience.
Hey, thank you, Dr. Sky. I appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. You know, folks, we always get great guests on the Dr. Sky Experience, as you tell us. And coming up next is Lionel here on Talk Radio 77 WABC as we transition him to be our next captain on this radio starship powerhouse. Lionel, thank you for the kind comments you made about this show. I appreciate you, brother, and all you ladies and gentlemen out there, we appreciate you. We'll be doing this again Saturday midnight to 2 a.m. Sunday. More extenuating interviews from the great realms of astronomy, space, aviation, and weather. And a special shout-out to Tony, who's our helmsman, who's navigating and pointing the power of this magnificent media powerhouse, Talk Radio 77 WABC, in your direction. Happy Mother's Day.
At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 300 programs at asuonline.asu.edu.